Hello and welcome to my knitting podcast. My name is Céline and today I'm sitting down to tell you all about my recent finished objects, works in progress and knitty acquisitions. I am so happy that today's video is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform for creatives to stand out and succeed online. I'll be talking more about that later on, so let's begin with what I'm wearing. This cardigan is my freshly released pattern Suki cardigan. I designed this piece with the intention of grouping all of the characteristics that I crave in a cardigan these days according to the style that I'm into. I'd also been struggling to find a round neck of this sort in a cardigan, so I decided to create it myself, and I really love the finished look. I think it's a really nice balance of preppy but also a little bit cool. So it's a boxy, basically bomber style drop shoulder. It's knitted top down seamlessly. You begin by casting on for the back panel, then you work the two front panels individually, and at some point you join those together, you work the rest of the body flat, and then you pick up stitches for the sleeves. I included short rows to create a shoulder cap, and then you knit those in the round. It's finished off with 1x1 rib on the cuffs and the hem, and then for the button band and the collar I wanted something sleeker and more subdued and almost seamless and invisible, so I went for a double knitted button band, and to make that even more seamless I picked buttons that are basically the same color as the yarn. And then for the collar I did a double folded stockinette collar. I find that pretty much most cardigan patterns out there that have a double knitted button band are v-necks, so that the double knitting can be worked all in one go from one side around the neck down to the other side. Here I worked the two sides separately because obviously it's not a v-neck. So that was a really fun challenge and I'm very chuffed with how it ended up looking. This yarn is the Yartegarn New Life Wool in the shade 4220 pink. I love the concept of this yarn. It's 100% recycled, and I think you can see that from the rustic texture and the odd bit of pink and white tweed. I think it's really lovely. I did mention this, I do wish I had held it with mohair just because of the color that I picked. I think it would have benefited aesthetically from a little bit of halo and floof. I still love it with a passion and I would love to make it in black at some point. But we'll see. I created this design while I was watching Gilmore Girls for the first time, hence the name Suki. But yeah, if you enjoy the look of it, I'll leave the link to the pattern in the description box, and everything that I'll be mentioning today will also be in the description box. I must say I've been on a roll creating my own designs. It's just making me enjoy life so much. Just being creative and coming up with something from scratch is so rewarding. So this month I released another pattern. I wasn't expecting to be releasing two patterns this month, and it's of the Evie hood. So it doesn't look like much flat out, so I'm gonna wear it. So the Evie hood is a bonnet style hood, as you can see, in a stunning flower looking stitch. Let me turn around for you. So this is the stitch. We got it all over. It meets in the middle at the back of the head in a little V formation, which is one of my favorite features about this. It's worked flat, back and forth, bottom up, so you cast on stitches at the neck, and then you work the first section in one piece. And then it's divided in the two sides of the head, and that's when you incorporate the head and crown decreases, and then the top is seamed shut, and so is the back of the head, and then it's finished off with double knitting edging at the neck, at the face, and then the ties are also double knitting. She's the cutest thing I've ever made. I'm so in love with her. I have quite a few single skeins of hand-dyed yarn in my stash, specifically 100-gram skeins of fingering weight yarn. I wanted to create a hood pattern that would help me use up that skein entirely without needing more of it, just 100 grams. So this is sort of a one skein project, but technically isn't because I've held it with mohair. Either way, it's the perfect pattern for that one skein of hand-dyed fingering weight yarn that you have in your stash. The hand-dyed yarn I used is from the Camel's yarn. I picked it up from Beautiful Knitters Yarn Shop, and it was their BFL sock in the shade Flora Day. I think this colorway worked in this stitch is the most beautiful pairing I've ever come up with, if I do say so myself. It's so pretty. To my joy, I was able to stash bust even further with this by holding it with one strand of mohair. I had just under 2 skeins of Hobby Friends Kid Silk mohair in a pink shade that was perfect for this. So I used that up entirely. and I ran out literally when I had this much left of the second double knitted tie. Fortunately, I had some yellow mohair, and since the main yarn in this has some yellow, it was perfect. Quirky characteristic about my hood is that one tie is more yellow than the other. I don't know why. This makes me so happy. I think it's so cute that they're a little bit different. It's really interesting to see how the mohair changes the undertone of the main yarn so much. The thing about hand-dyed yarns is that you can really play with the different colors to bring one of the colors out more when you pair it with mohair. I had such a blast designing this, a little less in the beginning when I was constantly unraveling. I unraveled this so many times. I actually had initially cast on at the top of the head, which meant that the stitch would appear like this, like upside down. And I felt like it didn't look like a flower as much as it did when it was orientated this way. So then I was like, oh my goodness, I have to knit it bottom up. And then I had quite a lot of trouble designing the decreases at the back of the head. It was just so hard to keep them looking nice while still maintaining the stitch pattern. Initially, I was working the top of the head as one piece and putting decreases down the middle, but it just was not looking cute. Yeah, with trial and error, I decided to try out separating the left and right panels of the head and then seaming them together, and it turned out exactly as I had envisioned. So I'm so chuffed with this pattern, and the stitch is just majestic. I'm pretty sure this video will come out on my birthday, and I'll be running a birthday sale on Ravelry where all my patterns will be on sale. So if it's still the 2nd of April when you're watching this, the sale is running. So feel free to make the most out of that. If you do, I'm just so grateful that you would choose my pattern to knit with. But yeah, it's been a major objective of mine to create more of my own knitting patterns, because I think it's such a constructive way to grow as a knitter, but also as a creative trying to build a community online. To me, there is nothing that expresses togetherness more than seeing people making my Winnie sweater and the Sadie top and the Suki cardigan and now the Evie hood. And so speaking of building a presence and community online, I'm so delighted to be partnering up with Squarespace for this video. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform for creatives to stand out online. I've been working on my own website using Squarespace. Because of its many features, I've not really had to try that hard. Building the website is just so easy. Squarespace also has cutting-edge design, which means I was absolutely spoiled for choice when selecting the template for my website. They've just got something tailored to everyone and anything. My aim is to start selling my knitting patterns on my own website as well, so Squarespace's online store feature would be perfect to kickstart that. Whether you sell digital or physical product, Squarespace will provide an easy and safe platform to control online payments, inventory, shipping, and fulfillment. If you're also interested in building a Squarespace website, you can head to squarespace.com to start a free trial, and once you're ready to launch the website, you can go to squarespace.com/Woozy By Céline and use code Woozy By Céline to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. If you do make a website with Squarespace, please can you comment the name of your site in the comments, because I'd love to check it out and just see what you guys do. I think that'd be really cute. The next finished piece you may have seen at the very end of my last video, which was a knitter in Cologne. My friend Karen and I from Beautiful Knitters, we headed to Germany for a yarn trade show, the H&H in Cologne, and so I filmed that whole thing. It was so much fun, and Karen had the idea of knitting on the same project during the 2 days that we were there, so that's exactly what we did. We selected this cutie. This is the Floris. It's a collar that we found in the Line magazine, issue 24. It's a pattern from Vivian Way. I don't know if I would have ever made it had it not been for Karen coming up with this idea of knitting it together, and I'm so happy that she prompted me to do this. I've never made a collar before just because it's not the most obvious piece to knit, I think. It's definitely underhyped. Obviously, it has to be your style. I get it why not everyone would wear something like this, but if it is, I highly recommend it because it's fast, it's so cute, and then it's versatile. Like, you can wear it on so many different things. I must be honest, while I was making this, I was unsure how much wear I'd get out of this just because I feared it was going to make my outfits too childish. But then I put it on for the first time and I was pleasantly proven so wrong. It just adds so much character to your outfit. It's honestly so perfect for me, and I can't believe I don't own anything with a collar. I'm in love with her. I'm also obsessed with the yarn that I used. This is Pashmina by Madeline Tosh in the shade Horn, which is an ivory base with vibrant specks of color all throughout. So it really makes this fun. It goes with everything and it's so soft. Fiber content in here is 75% merino wool, 15% silk, and 10% cashmere. So it's silky. But yeah, the florist collar is a little flower, literally. It's got 6 petals, alternation between stockinette, in which you've got 3 little ruffles, and then some garter stitch, and that's where you decrease to make the shaping of the petals. It's got a nice repetition where you really have to follow the pattern in the beginning, but once you get to the 2nd or 3rd petal, you get the hang of it, and then you can just do it off of memory, and that's just a really satisfying combination. It's got I-cord edging all around and at the neck as well, and then the 2 ties are little I-cords. I did find, I think, 2 mistakes in the pattern, so if you're planning to make this, make sure that once you reach the decreases in the garter stitch section, you knit to 5 stitches before the end instead of 3 stitches. Karen also found another small mistake when she tells you how many times to repeat the sections to make the 6 petals. I can't remember exactly how the mistake went, but the construction of this is so obvious that I didn't even notice there was a mistake. As long as you've got 6 petals and each end has garter stitch, you're good to go. It's interesting that I made this with Karen because she also noticed a feature of this design that she decided to modify because it kind of bothered her conceptually. I wasn't fussed, so I kept it as is. So it's good to show you what she decided to modify. So if you look at the ruffles, this first ruffle is placed immediately after the last garter stitch row, whereas the last ruffle has a few rows of stockinette before it goes into the garter. After the ruffle, there's a little bit of stockinette here, but no stockinette here. And that bothered Karen, so she decided to omit these rows of stockinette and just immediately switch to garter. Just flagging that that's a thing, and if it's the sort of feature that would bother you, to also maybe omit those rows, just keeping in mind that it will make your collar I think 12 rows shorter, which at the end of the day, 12 rows in fingering weight yarn is not that much. Karen's collar is not really noticeably shorter than mine or narrower than mine. This collar does not start out very narrow, so there is definitely room to make that modification and you still will have space for your neck. Other than that, it was a marvelous experience knitting this up. It was so fun because there is quite a lot going on in every section, but not too much where you have to be glued to the pattern. My knitty dream for 2025 is to knit special pieces. I want my 2025 knits to be my favorite knit pieces I've ever made, and this definitely makes the cut. It's so special, unique. I've never done something like it, and I really recommend it. I don't know what to tell you. I've been really into my accessories this month because the 3rd finished object is beanie number 6 by My Favorite Things. Immediately when this came out, I thought it was so beautiful, but I had no idea how it could look on me, so I kind of parked the desire to make this, and then I was making my way around Unravel Yarn Festival, and someone had it at their stand and I tried it on, and that was when I knew that I was gonna make it. Since that day, I've been on the lookout for some good boucle yarn, and then when I was in Cologne for the trade show, we walked past the Gepard stand. Your girl walked away with 1 skein of Gepard boucle yarn, their teddy dare, which is what My Favorite Things recommends. The pattern actually calls for 2 skeins, I only had 1, so off the bat, I knew that I was gonna have to play around potentially with some scrap yarn. Since the brim is folded, I was planning to just add a section of scrap yarn that would then be hidden, and then that would kind of fix my issues. But here's what happened. I wanted to see how far the boucle could take me, so I cast on and knit this whole boucle section until I ran out. And then I folded it in half and I put it on my head. And I was like, hold on. this is the perfect length for the brim. I ended up knitting the brim 5 centimeters shorter, I believe, and it worked. And that's because I fold it double, but in the pattern she folds it triple. So she would fold it like once and then again. That's the only difference. But can I be honest? I think this modification is worth you not buying a second skein of boucle, you know? I don't know if I'd fold it triple. Also because if I'd fold it triple, the brim would be even thicker. I just love how it looks double folded. It just worked out so well. I have none of the boucle left, which is great. I don't have to add it to my stash. And speaking of stash busting, actually, that's what I did for the brown section. I had a couple of skeins of Herd yarn, which is a DK weight, and they were actually 2 different shades, quite similar to each other, but you need worsted for the top. So I just held those 2 double, but holding them together gave me a really subtle, beautiful dimension and a really lovely fabric. I really did not have to use much of that brown either. I could probably make another 2 of these beanies with what I've got left. Obviously I'd have to get more boucle, but you know what I mean. I wonder if I could follow this pattern, make it exactly the same, just entirely with the brown without the boucle. I could totally do that, and then I'd use that brown up, which would be amazing. And so I'm really happy. As you can see, my brim keeps on slipping down, and that's just because I've not secured it the way she recommends. I've just not gotten around to it, but I will. Obviously this beanie recalls the classic shearling style, and I was very fascinated to see what techniques were going to be used to recreate the stitching of the 4 panels of the hat. My favorite things just uses I-cord, and it's really easy to know where to make them because if you look at the wrong side, you basically work 4 columns of purl stitches, and then you just pick up stitches for the I-cord on the purl ridges, which is super, super easy and so effective. I did a little mistake here because I knit this at like 1 or 2 a.m. I am a project knitter. I cannot wait for my project to be done. I just didn't want to go to bed before I finished it. I kind of knit my I-cords wrong. I wasn't really looking at the photo either, and what you're meant to do is knit the first I-cord from one side, migrating all the way to the opposite, and then add the remaining 2 individually. I migrated to the next column, not the opposite one. To be fair, I could kind of sew it together a little bit, but no one will ever notice. No one's gonna know, except all of you watching. It was my first time working with boucle yarn, and I had heard a lot of horror stories in the past, but honestly, this one's really simple and actually quite fun to work in boucle because it's just a tube. You don't have to make increases or anything. It's probably the best thing to knit boucle in. It's just a straight tube with nothing else. So it did really hurt my hands though. It was quite tough on the hands, that's the only thing. Also, let me put it on. Isn't it so cute? And now onto the works in progress. I am so excited about these whips. Knitting has just been such a delight lately. And the first work in progress I'm sharing with you today is the Esther sweater by Scapel. It's a collaboration with Helena Moo. Oh my gosh, look at her. So this was a design that I've been in love with ever since I first saw it on Instagram. I knew that I was going to make it. Finally bought the kit. I'm not sure if you can purchase the pattern without buying the yarn kit because Scapel, which by the way, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but Scapel sells their own yarn as well. So yeah, I just bought the kit. It's beautiful 100% wool from Norway in white, pink, and lavender. I'm so excited. Oh my goodiness. I can't even describe how excited I am. So this sweater is obviously worked bottom up, which is not my favorite. This screams mountain skiing. It's so not the time of the year to be working on this, but I couldn't be happier about it, to be honest. I'm doing the crazy thing of not really catching my floats, which is kind of naughty of me, but the reason behind this is that I've knit the same colorway in colourwork before for my songbird mittens. So I had a cream and a pink, and I caught all my floats, and the pink was super visible under the white. And I feel like that took away from the neatness of my work. I didn't want that to happen. So I'm not really catching my floats. I'm catching them when it's absolutely necessary. I'm trying my best to keep my floats as loose as I can so that these bigger floats won't affect my color work. This is what the floats look like. You can see they're quite big. At times, I'm kind of scared they're too loose because there are some stitches that are a little bit big. I think that's okay. I think the way it's gonna work is that when I'm gonna block this, I'm gonna give this kind of a little bit of a pull so that all the floats stretch out and the bigger stitches tuck in. Because even if I do that now, that kind of works. Also, the fact that this is 100% wool, I reckon the floats are going to felt a little bit together, or at least get set into themselves as I wear it, or maybe even a little bit with blocking, we shall see. Another reason why the bigger floats don't really worry me is that this is a sweater. It's not a glove, right? Where you put it on and if there are floats, you've got 5 fingers to worry about getting caught in your floats. I reckon I will be okay. They're also not that long. Like, they're long, but it's fine. I'm gonna knit this a little bit longer and then eventually reassess the situation, see where I stand. And even if I decide to start catching my floats later on, I think that's okay. I do give myself a lot of grace when knitting. I'm just gonna play it by ear and see how I do, and I'll keep you posted. But so far, I love her so much. Let me show you the yarn in the skein. So it has a pretty intense ply and twist that brings a lot of texture to the fabric. The strand itself feels quite thin for the needle size and the gauge of the pattern. It's worked on a 19 stitch gauge. I'm using 6.5 millimeter needles. I believe I went up 0.5 millimeter. It's just kind of funky because it feels like the strand is too thin, but because of the ply and because this is wool, this really blooms with blocking. I saw it on my swatch. It just fills the gaps and really grows in that sense. One thing that I do want to mention is that this pattern is not the most clear and in-depth. There have been quite a couple of instances where I've sat down looking at the pattern, being like, what? And then, had to reread. And something that's helped me loads is just referring to the photos. I just looked at the photos a bunch to understand what chart I was meant to use when, and that cleared things up for me. And that's how I was able to commit with confidence. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard a couple of times from a few people that sometimes Norwegian patterns can be quite essential and just kind of giving you more of an outline of what you should do. Not that this is an outline, but it's definitely not the most in-depth thing I've ever seen. In a video I mentioned that I was going to cast this on, and a few people commented that they were having trouble understanding the pattern. For me, the main confusion came from understanding what charts are meant to be worked when. So I'm going to explain how I made it a little bit clearer in my head, I guess. Please keep in mind that I've not gotten to the armhole yet, so I have no idea how the pattern changes. So what I'm about to say for sure only applies to this section. The pattern will make you divide the body in 2 sections. So we've got the beginning of round marker and then a halfway point marker to divide the front and the back. And they look exactly the same. So everything that you do in the front, you will then have to repeat for the back. The color work is not continuous. It doesn't go around the whole body seamlessly, but is rather divided by this little border from both sides. And this border, this little slither of pattern, this column, will run down the sides of the body below the arm. So whatever you'll knit from beginning of round marker to the midpoint marker will then be exactly repeated for the second half. And for each half, you start by knitting the stitches of chart B. Then you work chart A, which is the big chart. Just make sure you see what stitch in that chart you're meant to start at, depending on your size. For example, my size, I don't start at the beginning of the chart, I start at the middle, and then I go along, and then that's when I go to the beginning of the chart. I hope that makes sense. Once you've worked through chart A, you can move to chart D before the marker. And yes, that's my Esther sweater. I'm very excited to make some more progress. The wool smells woolly, which I also really like. I'm telling you, I am so in love with every single piece that I'm showing you in this podcast episode today. The next work in progress is a skirt, my first skirt, and it's knit in black yarn, so there's white fluff everywhere. But Oh yeah, you can see that. Oh my gosh, look at her. This is the Flow Skirt by Moonchain. Amanda just makes the most romantic, fairy-like cottagecore girly designs, and this one's no exception. I'm actually test knitting this, and listen to this. It is made to measure. So the size inclusivity here is skyrocketing. It also means that you can kind of change the shape of the skirt depending on how you want it to fit, if you want it super fitted or if you want something with a little bit more ease and drape. I'm pretty sure Moonchain originates as a crochet designer, and it's much more common to see made to measure crochet patterns. I've made many of those, whereas with knitting, I don't think I can name a made to measure knitting pattern, if not Amanda's patterns. I think it's just a slay. It's knitted top down with a garter stitch waistband and then overall lace motif for the body of the skirt. I was excited to cast this on, but have I fallen even more in love with the idea of the skirt as I've been working the lace? I literally started this 2 days ago, right? So it's not like I've done much. I've tried this on, and this is more of a belt for now. And I'm so happy I chose black. I reckon it's going to be super versatile and I'm going to be able to wear it in different occasions. I feel like if I had gone for something a bit lighter, I would have been a little bit more constrained with when I could wear it. It was my first time incorporating an elastic band into the waist. I do regret one thing about this. I regret not modifying it so that I can create a channel to remove the elastic in the future if it stretches or if I want to change the elastic for some reason. Here it's completely enclosed and I could only take it out by performing some surgery. For now, I'm just gonna have to put my faith into the elastic band and hope that it'll hold up a good stretch for a couple of years at least. This skirt is basically an alternation of lace and garter stitch, and it was so interesting and fascinating to see how Amanda instructed you to make increases based on your body measurements and body type. So far, I've made 1 set of increases at either side and then 2 sets at the back. I'm going to give myself a little bit more positive ease compared to Amanda's sample, which is amazing that I can do that because it's made to measure, right? And I'm just doing that because it just fits my style. It's what I'm more used to, what I like wearing, what makes me feel more comfortable and more at ease. It's making me so excited for summer and spring. In fact, it's the perfect yarn that I'm using for it. This is the yarn recommended, which is Drops Bell. This is in the shade 08, 53% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen. The reason why Amanda recommends this is that it really does not stretch a lot and it really holds a lot of integrity and doesn't change too much when it blocks. Also, you have to keep in mind that it's a skirt and it has a lot of fabric, and you should be worried about it weighing itself down and kind of opening up the lace at the top too much. You don't want that to happen, so something like this will hold together really nicely. Obviously, since it's made to measure, you can really decide how long the skirt is going to be, but I'm going to make it as long as I can. I think I got 6 skeins or 8. I'm not really sure, but I'm going to use them all up. I knew the garter stitch uses up a lot of yarn, but I wasn't expecting it to use so much yarn. I used 1 full skein just for the waistband. Isn't that crazy? It's so crazy. Look, you can see, this is where I joined a new skein. So literally like 2 rows into the lace after the garter. I thought that was pretty shocking. On the other hand, I've obviously worked this amount of lace, and this is how much I've got left out of the second skein. So the lace is more forgiving in that sense. So it will definitely work farther. That's just to say that especially if you want your skirt to be quite long, be sure to get enough yarn for it. It's time for knitty acquisitions, and the first one I have to show is kind of astonishing to me. It's this hank of hand-spun yarn. This was specifically hand-spun for me by my best friend Natty, who you may know. She was in 2 of my videos. She was in one recently. In that one, we talked all about her hand spinning, and if you don't know what goes into hand spinning, I will link one of my favorite videos on YouTube. It's a video about the enchanting process of hand spinning by Rajiv Surendra, and it is the most wholesome and emotional and poetic video ever. It literally makes me cry every time I watch it. It was such a good recommendation from my friend Claire, but I really recommend you watch that to understand the magic that this holds and what this means to me. But yes, so Natty hand spun this 100-gram skein, contains approximately 160 meters. She says it's DK slash worsted slash I think question mark. It's a merino blend, so 85% merino and 50% bamboo blend. It's a stunning sky blue color. It came with a little note from Natty, and when I received it, I cried. A skein of yarn shouldn't do this to me, but what can I say? It does. I still have not decided what I want to make with this. It will have to be a very well thought out decision. It will have to be meaningful. It will have to be important. I'm going to take my sweet time deciding because this is a treasure and I want to make it count. Next yarn acquisition is from the shop Wild and Woolly. I'm actually in the process of filming a knitter in London, which is part of my travel series. Obviously it's a bit different because I live in London, so I'm not exactly traveling for it. I'm more so waiting for sunny weekends during which I can film this. Sunny weekends are very rare, so it's kind of taking months to do that. But in that video, I will be going on a yarn crawl. I guess this is a spoiler, but when I went to Wild and Woolly, I bought 2 skeins of mohair. These right here. So this is the Gepard Kids Seta in the shade 608. To pair up with some other yarn that I have in my stash, this is the Issier Aran Tweed in the shade Confetti. I'm going to be making another skirt, precisely skirt number 1 by My Favorite Things. It's not an exact match. They didn't have too many darker grays. This was the closest I could get. And it's definitely more purpley in undertone. I predict it's going to subtly shift the undertone of the Aran Tweed to be a little bit more pinky, which I enjoy. It's what I did with my Evie hood as well. Also, this is Aran, so it's quite thick. I don't think it's going to be overpowered by this lace weight, so I think it's actually gonna match quite well. It will be my first time trying Gepard Kids Seta. This is 70% Super Kid mohair and 30% silk. I do enjoy that the silk core is pretty much the same color as the mohair. It's quite soft and fluffy. I wonder how mohair is gonna feel on my legs. Guess we'll see, but I'll keep you posted. And we're on to the last knitty acquisition. This one is a knitting pattern book that was really kindly sent to me by Line Publishing, and it is Everyday Knits by Paula Narkiniemi. I hope that's close to how you pronounce it. I will put her Instagram handle on the screen, but she just came out with this book that contains easy wardrobe essentials. So I thought it'd be fun to show you guys which ones I'll be putting in my knitting queue. The first one is Jolene. It's a very soft and feminine sweater, and she uses fluffy yarn for it. And it has a V-neck and a simple cable detail at the waist, which I love so much because it almost looks like there's some sort of tie cinching in the waist, but it's just the cable. I had never seen this sort of detail before, so I think it's very special for that reason. I really need to build my summer wardrobe because I don't have a lot of garments for that season, so sunny would be perfect. It's just your staple tank top. It's simple and elegant. You can dress it up and dress it down. This one specifically is finished off with I-cord edging. I love the thickness of the straps, especially at this point. On me personally, I find it a little bit more flattering when this area has more coverage, because for some reason it just gives me the illusion of a little bit more of a feminine silhouette, if that makes sense. So I really appreciate the construction of this. You may have gathered in this video that I'm apparently all into making skirts lately, but then I saw the fast car pattern in this book, and these are shorts. I've been aching to make this since I flipped this book open. Paula says, for her, it captures the essence of freedom and adventure of those carefree student summers with no set plans. Imagine lounging in this in the summer, in the garden, reading a book, with birds chirping. Need I say more? My knitting book collection is slowly growing, and I love that so much. I've been really enjoying knitting patterns in the form of a book, you know, bound up in a book. I think the whole experience is just that bit more wholesome. Let me know which ones are your favorite knitting pattern books. I am done running through all the points on my list today, so please let me know what's on your list. What are your recently finished objects, current works in progress, and yarn and knitty acquisitions, because I'm super nosy. Also, let me know how you're doing, what you've been up to, anything going on in your life that you'd like to share. I love when the comments section under my videos feel like a conversation. It's the most special. Thank you so much for sticking till the end of this video. I really appreciate the company. I will leave my Instagram on screen in case you'd like to follow my creations more in real time and catch up on there. I will say bye for now, and I hope to see you in the next video.